Okay, back. This is an unplanned video. Look, couple of weeks following six-pack shortcuts, and you know that guy Mike Chandler, how y'all guys doing? And look, after a few weeks of doing that program, I'm not going to show you my stomach because, God, that's not something you want to see. But look. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Macho man! Yeah, I am the macho man! Yeah! I'm about to combust. Anyways, another funny thing I want to say before I get this one started and I talk about what I want to talk about. I wouldn't advise this, us being wrestling and MMA geeks on the internet. If you believe the stereotype, we don't get many women and you know, all those things. But if you ever got yourself into a set of circumstances where you had unwanted female attention and you didn't know how to get rid of them, and you've tried everything, like, oh, I've got a woman, or look, I'm gay, or just anything, if you want to have to use this as a last resort, here's what I do. Tell the girl you're a wrestling fan and look how quickly she will disappear. I guarantee you this one works every single time. You tell them that and they just look at you like you've got, you know, 20 eyes or something. It's just the most funniest thing ever. So I was going to do a video and I was going to talk about The Miz, because I was watching some old stuff and I was thinking, man, this guy has really fallen off. And then I tune in, do some updates, and I read something about chael sonnen. And chael sonnen has hinted about making some changes, and there was an announcement, you know, coming soon. And it's been announced on MMA Weekly and UFC Tonight by Chael himself that he will be fighting in December, and he will be fighting Forrest Griffin at light heavyweight. So the big story is, ta-da! Chael sonnen will fight at light heavyweight. So here is my thoughts on the topic. Chael, first of all, used to fight at light heavyweight, and I believe he fought Forrest Griffin many years ago. Chael sonnen has fought at light heavyweight for quite a while, and then he dropped down to 185. Had some problems there, and eventually kind of worked himself up into the top 10 at some point at middleweight. Obviously, we know the history with him and Anderson Silva and how he got to the Anderson Silva fights, and there's been a lot of talk as of late among fans that 205 needs some star power and it needs a boost right now. With Jon Jones as this dominant world champion and just beating everybody there, and the fact that they need some new faces there and some new challenges for Jon Jones, what would happen next? I mean, Chuck Liddell retired a few years ago. Tito Ortiz retired and was no longer in his prime anyways. He already fought Machida and beat Machida, although they might rematch. Well, they may rematch soon anyways. He beat Shogun. Gustafsson is someone that people are talking about, and maybe at some point, you know, depending on what happens with Gustafsson and Shogun at UFC 5, which is going to be a big show, by the way, depending on what happens there and how much of a star he's perceived as after that, that could be one. Gegard Mousasi is another name, but he's in Strikeforce and he's injured right now, and I don't think he'll be fighting till at least after November, so that's another name. So right now 205 needs something, and it needs a spark right now. So chael sonnen could be that very spark in the weight class, and almost like a true villain, a true pro wrestling heel. Chael sonnen, he gets humbled by this Anderson Silva second fight. Even before that, he's not talking in the same way that he was, you know, in the week leading into it. And even after the fight, he seemed like, you know, he'd learnt his lesson and he was starting to humble a little bit. And then he said that thing about Quentin Rampage Jackson, and then he announced he was fighting at 205, and bit by bit you begin to see the old Chael sonnen re-emerge as he takes some shots at Jon Jones. And, you know, I could take his 205 belt just like I could take his candy. This guy's a little punk kid. And he's already started, and apparently now he's even gone after him on Twitter now, which is hilarious. So what does everyone else think about chael sonnen at 205? I think it's going to be interesting. Can he get past Forrest Griffin? I know that Forrest beat him before, but that was many, many years ago. The fighters have changed a lot. Will chael be dwarfed by these big 205ers? That's a problem a lot of guys have had. Rich Franklin was one example, but Rich doesn't have the wrestling that chael has. Rashad Evans was another guy that people said should fight at middleweight, but Rashad does very well at 205, and he's not necessarily dwarfed because he's got other skills and he's resilient enough to survive in the weight class, and was even a world champion in the weight class and fought guys bigger than him and, you know, managed to survive. So I wonder what's going to happen now with chael there. There are a lot of fights that he could have that would be very interesting. Chael Sonnen versus Lyoto Machida. I mean, chael has said a lot of things there that kind of continues his rivalry with the Black House camp. You could do Chael Sonnen versus Lil Nogueira. That would be another one. Again, continuing the rivalry with Black House. I don't think we'll ever see Chael Sonnen versus Dan Henderson. I know that Chael would not take that fight. You could probably see Chael Sonnen and maybe Rashad Evans, Chael Sonnen and Shogun. I mean, there are a lot of fresh fights for him, and I mean, I would like to see him at middleweight, but he's kind of in this weird position right now where he needs to do something, and maybe if he's at middleweight, he might end up as that gatekeeper, and that's not a proactive position. That's kind of where Rich Franklin was many years ago after Anderson beat him twice. He was in this position of gatekeeper, and he could beat all the up-and-coming guys, but it's going to kind of hurt the division in a lot of ways. So maybe this change, and with Sonnen at 205, this can spice things up and put him in a more proactive position. I wouldn't mind seeing Chael Sonnen versus Rampage Jackson. That would actually be very entertaining to watch, and considering there's already been some things said, so that would be a great thing to behold. Anyways, I'm kind of waffling and rambling, and let's get straight to the point. Do I think Chael Sonnen could beat Forrest Griffin? There's a possibility. I don't think Chael has that punching power. Maybe, you know, not cutting so much weight will help him. That's another interesting topic. Chael Sonnen, for his last fight, I believe he cut at least 20 to 30 pounds before the fight actually happened. And I think that when guys are cutting and draining ridiculous amounts of weight, you know, just to make a certain weight class, that affects their performance. We've seen it so many times. We've seen it with guys like Jake Shields, you know, when he cut 20 pounds before he fought Cameron, and he had that he won, but he just barely won the fight. And then we see guys who don't cut weight and they fight very, very effectively and have great fights. A guy like Frankie Edgar springs straight to mind. So maybe Chael was hoping to replicate the success that Edgar had, you know, not cutting too much weight, kind of fighting nearer enough to his walk around weight. So I'm going to wrap it up around there. Who knows what could happen. If Forrest beats Chael, that's going to be quite big, but I think this is quite a big fight and it's something they need. Right, I'm going to stop. I'm waffling. I'm not making any more sense. You make sense of it. So everyone on my channel, please write something. Please tell me what you think about Chael Sonnen at 205. Should he stay at 205? Should he have stayed at middleweight? What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen? Also, in addition to that, does anyone get the feeling that we're going to see more fighters shifting between weight classes? I've heard rumours of Anderson Silva contemplating going down to 170 and Machida going to 180. So, I'm going to stop right away. Tell me what you want to see. Tell me what you think. And I look forward to replying and respond to all of you. And I will promise this, going to do a wrestling video, so I will wrap this one up and peace.